Hello, I'm Otis Corbett, Director of Missions of Covington Baptist Association. A few weeks ago, I had the privilege of interviewing some real live missionaries on Facebook Live, and one of those was Rich Hutchens. Rich is a retired IMB missionary, and he is Minister of Missions and Discipleship at First Baptist Church, Birmingham. Rich has a great missions testimony, and he has an interesting background and an interesting perspective because he's not only served in Latin America, but he also served in the Middle East. I think you'll find his discussion of missions very interesting. So let's look at that together.
Susan and I began serving in missions in 1988, and I actually married a missionary. She was called to missions. I felt like I was supposed to be in the pastorate, and over the next about 10 years, God did a work in my heart, and we ended up going into South America missions with the Foreign Mission Board, and then became the International Mission Board. And we were around 17 years in South America, and had a chance during that time to visit Mexico City, which was an experience in itself. It's a fantastic city with a lot of opportunities. And then from there, when our last child left home, we raised our three children in Venezuela, where we were serving. And after that, we transferred fields to North Africa and the Middle East, and served for the next 10 years with that affinity group, what we call an affinity group for those of you who are listening. And so we were there for 10 years, and then we've been back now for approximately 6 years, and are just about to finish our 5th year here at First Baptist Church in Birmingham, where I've been serving as missions and discipleship pastor. All right. You know, one of the things that was eye-opening to us, because we spent so much time in South America, and although there are obviously differences between Venezuela and Mexico and Argentina, Ecuador, they all have their very distinct characteristics. When we made that shift over to North Africa, the Middle East, we realized that there are so many similarities between those two cultures. Their emphasis on family, their concept of time, their appreciation for getting together as a group and celebrating. They're both in their way very celebrative kind of cultures. And so we really not only appreciated and benefited from, when we started our work in North Africa, that connection back to Latin America. We had teams that came to work with us, and we really appreciated the fact that our missionaries there, of which we were one, and now these guys that are working in Mexico City, are implanting that vision in the churches that they're establishing. That's one of the things when we talk about establishing a church and developing leadership and then helping them along. We also want to do what Paul did, was to give them a vision for reaching beyond their local community, to make them a missional church, so that they're involved in the same thing that we're involved in. They have a passion for other nations and other people groups. And so, we've benefited from that as we've been working in that Middle Eastern part of the world. It is sometimes hard to talk about with specifics, but I will say this: when we mobilize people into these countries, as my brothers here are talking about the association coming down and partnering with the churches. There's so many things that teams coming down can do to come alongside the work and to encourage growth in that area. Even for the missionaries, to have someone come in and, in a sense, we get a chance to see with fresh eyes kind of what's going on around us. It's easy, as you're in a culture for a long time, you can become so inured to things that are going on. And when a volunteer team comes down and they start asking questions, it awakens in you an appreciation for things that they're seeing that maybe you need to revisit as a missionary, maybe even open doors for ministry. And we had that happen. We had teams come from some churches in Houston. They were Latin American churches, comprised of folks from all over, and a lot of folks from Mexico. And they would come into, when we were working in the northern part of Africa, they would come in, city of 20 million, and we could basically lose them in the city. I mean, because they not only had the same kind of sense of rhythm of the city, they also blended in very well physically. I mean, when I walked into the city, people knew that I was a North American. There's no way of disguising that. But when these guys would get out there, I mean, they became part of that city, and folks would welcome them in. They would have a chance to share. And we just had some tremendous opportunities to see these teams dig down deep and even make mistakes, which is also a very great thing to do. Is you have folks come in and they can make mistakes. That is to say, they can do things that we even tell them not to do, but they do it anyway. God uses it. There's at least a degree of separation. So if they kind of get slapped on the wrist, we can kind of step back and say, well, yeah, we're sorry about that. We told them not to do that. But the truth is, it really does open doors, and it pushes us. So we were about 7-8 years in that North African the country in the northern part of North Africa, and we had a great a sense of God's moving. The difficulty between when you're comparing church planting in those two different locations is the fact that you really can't be visible. So your churches tend to be kind of like the garage church that you described. They're all garage church and bathtub baptisms. They're all very, very small. There's always that need to sort of limit, in a way, your connections, so that if one group is outed for some reason, the other groups don't necessarily fall around them. So we do that. They do that still. It makes the growth of the church somewhat difficult because you don't have that mutual support. Having a great convention coming together is really a hard thing to see happen. And of course, just like in South America, it differs by degrees depending on the country that you're in. We were in Amman, Jordan, and Amman, it's much more open kind of a country. We even had people there who were on missionary visas, probably back from the 1950s. When you're talking about the guys coming in there to Mexico City. And so we had guys like that were on those visas, but we also had people that would not use, they wouldn't be on a meeting like this with their last name showing because they were working very much in a capacity where they're doing business, and as a part of their business, they're reaching out. We're seeing people respond in both places, where it's very, very closed and where it's open. It's just, it looks different in each place, and it's harder to count, as you can imagine, in some of these places where it's very closed. We thought it was going to be much harder when we shifted from South America to the Islamic nations to get into conversations. And as you said, Otis, it's really not. Now, it's different because there's a very different background. Of course, you're coming from Roman Catholicism in most of the South American nations, and Islam in the Middle Eastern and North African nations. But they're not secular. Religion is... Our concept of separation of church and state, or separation from of the secular and the sacred, that is very blurred. And so we found in the country we served in Venezuela that, we could get up one morning with our team and we could say, hey, let's go into this barrio and let's start a Bible study. And you could do that. You could go in there just door to door and you could start a Bible study. And that Bible study would may or may not develop into a church, but those folks would, it was... Now try doing that in the United States. Go to door and try to start a Bible study in somebody's home. But in the same way, in the Islamic countries, if you went out and said, I want to start a conversation today where I get to talk about Jesus Christ, much, much easier than in the United States. You can easily get into a discussion, and really, contrary to what a lot of people think, you can get into a very respectful conversation with most Muslims about who Jesus Christ is and what he means. And they have their perspective, But if you listen to them, they'll listen to you, and you just trust the Holy Spirit to work through that.
Isn't Rich an interesting and engaging person? He's a great guy to talk to in person as well. And I hope he encouraged you to continue your support of our IMB missionaries through the cooperative program and also through the Lottie Moon Christmas offering. Thanks for watching and thanks for supporting our global missions effort here at Covington Baptist Association.